Welcome in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of, I guess we'll call this Twins and Gophers, maybe some Vikings on SI here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Tony Liebert, Will Ragatz, Joe Nelson, and his favorite gnome from his holiday collection. Boys, it's an exciting day, a lot to discuss, so let's jump right into it. We'll start off with Twins news and rumors and speculation. Carlos Correa's name being tossed and bandied about as a potential trade candidate as the winter meetings are underway down in Dallas, I believe. It's interesting times for the Twins. Obviously, no addition to the payroll, so they're having to figure out different ways to add to their team and, get better before the 2025 season. So, Joe, let's start off with this. Let's start off with you here. Carlos Correa in the news as the potential trade candidate. What have we heard? What do we think that this might lead to for the Twins this offseason?
Well, I think the natural speculation is that Minnesota could trade him because no matter how many people want to report it, they are trying to salary dump. I mean, I don't buy it for 1 second that, with a projected payroll right now of around 140 million, that they're only interested in getting back to around 130 million so they don't increase on last year's payroll. I think they're salary dumping. It just makes too much sense when you have ownership that's trying to get out of the game. That's a big contract for a guy who hasn't proved to be healthy for more than about half of the season. And I really believe they are trying to salary dump. And then Darren Wolfson from KSTP TV reported earlier this week that he's hearing the Boston Red Sox are a team that's interested. I kind of scoped that out, and I was looking at Boston's top prospects. They actually have four prospects in the top 25 of MLB Pipeline's top 100. And two of them can play shortstop, including the number 7 overall prospect in the game. And they're already at the AA, AAA level. So those guys are close to the big leagues. Now, does Boston want to go spend a bunch of money and pay Carlos Correa what he's making now with the Twins? For the star power to compete with the Yankees and compete with the Dodgers, compete with those 5 or 6 teams in baseball that are going gangbusters to win a World Series and get the best players in the game? I don't know. I mean, it seems like a youth movement at some of these marquee positions has been really, really successful for some of these other teams like Anthony Volpe in New York. So maybe Boston really is interested, and maybe the Twins could get a high-profile prospect back in return. I'm not sure, but I would 100% believe that the Twins are trying to get rid of Carlos Correa. I don't think they can realistically look at their roster right now and say, oh, yeah, we're going to contend in the American League this season. That said, they do have the highest anticipated payroll of all the American League Central teams, which is an absolute abomination for the state of Major League Baseball. It's an embarrassing product right now, and there's no other way to look at it. You should be ashamed if you're the Minnesota Twins.
Is this the right move, Will, for the Twins to be even pondering the idea of trading Carlos Correa?
I don't want to. I'm not going to get into whether I think they are or aren't considering it because, like Joe said, they very much might be. If they trade Carlos Correa, I mean, that is just another slap in the face to the fans. After you come off of that 2023 season, you cut payroll last year. Going into this year, needing to shed some more payroll, you go ahead and you trade the guy who's your best player when he's on the field. It would really, really be pretty disgusting to me if they do that. I don't really care that they have Brooks Lee, who's unproven, waiting in the wings. They have other people who could potentially play short. The Twins, with their payroll restrictions, they were able to get Carlos Correa because of the whole injury concerns with the Giants and the Mets. They need to keep that guy. He is the clubhouse leader. He is their best player. I understand that there are injury concerns that could maybe continue, but it doesn't sound like there's real reason to be worried that this is going to be a debilitating thing that just ruins his career. Otherwise, I don't think the Red Sox would have any real interest. And I've heard people saying that the Yankees should go after Correa after missing out on Juan Soto. I just think the Twins absolutely have to keep Carlos Correa, find other ways to shed talent. If you got to package a prospect to get rid of Christian Vasquez or get rid of Chris Paddock or whoever it is, move some salaries around, fine. Don't trade Carlos Correa. The Twins' path to being relevant at all in the next few years is somehow finding a way to keep Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis, and their starting pitching on the field. Because if they do that, the pieces are still there, like we talked about late last year during the collapse this season. Like they have the talent if they're healthy to be the best team in the AL Central, to compete with the best teams in the league, even though they're not spending that kind of money. They've got the big three on offense, some other bats, Matt Wallner, some prospects coming up. They've got a really good starting rotation. If Joe Ryan hadn't gotten hurt this year, they probably find a way to make the playoffs. Bailey Ober, Pablo Lopez, there's depth there. They've got Griffin Jacks, Joan Duran out of the bullpen. Like there's talent on this team. If you trade Carlos Correa, a lot of fans, there's the whole TV situation next year. I think fans would just start to check out even more. It would be a really, really bad situation in my eyes if that's what ends up going down.
Tony, is this the right move? You think this would, as Will kind of pointed out there, this would certainly be a big slap into the face to fans who invested time and effort into this team, and the team just doesn't seem to want to invest time onto the product on the field. It would feel like if they trade Correa.
Yeah, I like Will's point saying that Correa's kind of become the leader of this franchise in the clubhouse, and with all the questions surrounding the ownership and the future outlook of who's going to be calling the shots in the near future, I think trading Correa would really lower overall interest especially if they started the year out slow. Like, he's your marquee guy right now. We all know that Buxton's in and out of the lineup all the time, but trading him away would really, I think, completely plummet like casual interest in the Twins heading into the season. Because he's kind of your casual like star right now. Like, if you ask someone who lightly follows the Twins to name a player, they're going to say Correa or Buxton. So if you trade one of those guys away, I think it would just plummet interest. And long term, it might be a better move for the overall future of the team. But I think, struggle to even hear that argument, because the Twins have shown that they can find plenty of prospects with their own draft picks in their own farm system. So I think they need to rely on that. Keep Correa as a guy who's proven to be successful. He has been in and out of the lineup recently, but he's a guy that you want on your team, and you should keep on your team as long as you can.
So I think one of the most damning things I heard all week, and this is total speculation, but when the Carlos Correa news was kind of floating around, in the background, Dan Hayes of The Athletic reported, I think, 6 or 7 names that the Twins could look to trade to essentially bring the payroll down from $140 million to $130 million. And among those names he included was Bailey Ober. And forget Joan Duran and Griffin Jacks, which trading either one of those, and he mentioned both of them, that would be a stinger into the hearts of Minnesota Twins fans as well. But if you trade Bailey Ober when he still has 2 years of team control, arbitration eligible, he had a stretch for like 2.5, 3 months where he was arguably the second or third best pitcher in baseball last season. That would be the absolute epitome of pathetic. And I could not stand that or stomach that as a Twins fan. But from an objective viewpoint, it's also embarrassing because it would make no sense to trade Bailey Ober, who's making like $3 million, right? What are you doing if you're trading a guy who is arguably your second best pitcher? There was a stretch, we were talking about it, guys, where Bailey Ober was putting himself at least into a conversation locally that he should get attention for American League Cy Young candidacy. That's how good Bailey Ober was last year. He's got bulldog in him. He keeps his pitch count low. He goes deeper into games. He strikes batters out. He's got toughness. He's never hurt. I mean, if you want to really wreck the season, you trade Bailey Ober. Do that. And then you can rely on Zebby Matthews and David Festa and hope to God that your young arms can blossom into stars before they're ready, because that's what the Twins will be doing if they trade Bailey Ober.
So what's the move for...
I agree. I really just don't... I've heard some people say that, the Twins could, deal from areas of strength or deal from areas of depth and try to capitalize on players' value, whether that's Bailey Ober or consider trading Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez, one of your other starters. If you do that, that to me is depleting one of your real strengths and one of your real, the paths for you to be relevant and compete next year. Like, they need those three guys to stay healthy and be on the field, because you don't. Yeah, you have David Festa, Zebby Matthews, Simeon Woods Richardson, maybe Marco Raya, Andrew Morris, prospects coming up, but like you can't count on those guys. We saw what happened with Zebby Matthews last year. He had a couple of good starts and then got figured out pretty quickly and was not very good for the Twins, which happens to young pitchers. Like, the Twins cannot rely on that. They need to be keeping what they have as strengths, which is those three frontline starting pitchers, the Duran-Jax duo in the bullpen. I don't want to trade either of those guys.
No.
Even if you say Jax's value might never be higher, that dude was one of the best relievers in baseball last year.
Right.
And it looked sustainable. So they need to keep him. They need to keep Duran, whose value, by the way, isn't as high as it would have been prior to last season, because he was good but not as unhittable this year as he has been in the past. And then in the lineup, it's the same thing. They need to keep Correa. They need to keep Buxton. They need to keep Lewis, because this is how you're going to give yourself a chance to overcome the payroll limitations that you are putting on yourself, by the way, and compete in the American League. So if you're going to trade anybody, trade Christian Vasquez, even if you got to attach a prospect to get rid of that salary or eat some of the money. Trade Chris Paddock, who has done nothing since he's been here. Trade Willie Castro. That's one that I would be okay with in terms of a guy who had a good year last year, was an all-star, but whose second half was maybe more of the player he actually is. And that would sting because of his versatility, his durability. He's really liked in the clubhouse. But if you're going to do something to trade a guy while his value is high, I'd be okay with something like that. There's about 8 guys who I've named who are your best players. I really don't think the Twins should be looking to trade any of them this year to get below $130 million. That would be pretty ugly.
So is what Will just laid out there, Joe, basically all they can do in the offseason? Because we know that there's going to be some significant hurdles to clear if they want to add to their payroll. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're going to. So they have to find ways to trade. We heard Derek Falvey talking to MLB Network radio and TV yesterday saying that they've been spending most of their time this offseason with other teams. Is it just going to be finding these trades on the margins, or is there some other maneuvering that they can do this offseason to improve on what was a disappointing 2024 season?
I think you nailed it right there. And the amount of excitement that there is in the Twins offseason ahead of 2025 is hurting my dog snoring in my arms right now. Absolutely bored to death. I mean, there's just no excitement. I can look at these roster projections and get excited because I can find ways to be optimistic. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And yeah, Matt Wallner, some of these guys that are young and up and coming, Brooks Lee, maybe Jose Miranda is healthy and puts it all together. Remember, he had 12 hits in a row last season. That was pretty cool. I mean, there's lots of reasons to sit here and eyeball it and say, you know what? If this and this and this and this happens, they could be pretty dangerous. But it doesn't sound like they have any plans to be dangerous. It sounds like they're trying to trim through trades, and that's going to deplete the roster. Like you wrote about, Jonathan, on Twins and SI, Derek Falvey, the Twins chief baseball officer, has come out and said, we're looking at trades right now. We're not really looking to sign anybody. I mean, you're looking to deal people on your roster and then maybe go get a first baseman, a right-handed bat, which is going to be probably some high strikeout, mediocre home run hitter who plays below average defense. That's probably what you're going to get, right? Or you're just going to throw Eddie Julian over there and hope for the best, right? Like World Baseball Classic Eddie Julian. That's who we got at first base. Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, that's the state of the Twins right now. You're just kind of clinging to an edge. It's like you're Mufasa, right? You're hanging from the edge of the cliff, and Scar, he's just digging his claws into your paws, and you're about to fall and get crushed by the antelope. You're dead, man. That's the Twins right now. You are Mufasa. You think you're the king, but you are not. You are going to die.
TV commercial just came on Joe's TV.
Yep, and you're going to leave all these young guys, Simba style, to sit here and figure it out for themselves. Good effing luck. That's what's happening. By the way, if the Twins are such good business people, I think the Pollad companies own they have 80 companies. The foundation for success in my eyes is you look at what you do really well right now, and then you maximize it before you start trying to do other things well. Maximize what you already do well. 10x that. So when you're talking about shedding your back end of your bullpen or trading some of your young stud pitchers or your all-star shortstop, that's stupid. That's bad business. So I don't know what the Twins are thinking right now, and maybe that's why they're trying to sell the team, because they can't figure it out.
Let's keep the positive momentum going. Let's jump over to Tony here. Gophers hoops not looking great. Lost their first two Big Ten matchups. We've talked about it in the group chat here a couple times, where you look at the rest of the schedule, Tony, and you said this a couple times. It's hard to find a win, find many Big Ten wins coming down the schedule here. They've lost 4 of their last 5. It's been rough going for Ben Johnson. Now their net ranking is below St. Thomas, which St. Thomas has been a D1 school for only 3 years. Minnesota over 100. So clearly things not going well for Ben Johnson. It's a Gopher squad. What's going on with the Gophers hoops team right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest answer would be the players they added from the transfer portal have not performed like they thought they would. I think that's really all it comes down to. Last year they brought in Elijah Hawkins, Mike Mitchell Jr. signed Cam Christie as an incoming freshman. Those 3 guys had games that they looked like an all-conference player. Lakai Patterson, Femi Odekale, and Frank Mitchell. I don't think any of those 3 guys have had one game where they've looked like an all-conference player. And it's tough to ask any coach to replace 3 starters year after year, maybe more. But it really presents, I think, bigger issues for the Gophers basketball program as a whole. The next, I think, 5 years is going to be really interesting, and college basketball specifically, with the revenue sharing starting soon, the change in roster sizes, and it'll be up to, I think, the Gophers administration to see if they want to keep going in this direction, if they like their leadership, if they trust them to go through this big transition, because I think the sport's going to continue to change a lot. But I think on Monday night against Indiana, it was pretty clear that it's just a roster thing. Dawson Garcia is an all Big Ten level player, and Mike Mitchell Jr. can be the lead guard, maybe the number 2 guard on a winning team. But outside of that, this team just has way too many questions when your third best player is arguably true freshman Isaac Asama.
I'll chime in here, because when you look at the portal additions, and you wrote about this, Tony, and it was really well put, because when Ben Johnson and his staff went out and got Elijah Hawkins and then recruited Cam Christie, that turned into a pretty good core last year. You can argue about talent development and coaching, but that was a good roster. Those are good players. They found good players. They were able to, I don't know how, but the NIL money worked. Maybe they were fortunate. But this year it's the total opposite. I mean, it's one of 2 things, right? It's either you don't know how to mold these new players together and make them work, or you just lost out on the best players in the portal and had to settle for the likes of Lakai Patterson and Femi Odekale and Frank Mitchell. I mean, I remember when Frank Mitchell committed to the Gophers, it was like, oh my God, the Gophers got a guy. This guy's a rebounding machine. And then I look at the box scores and I see 3 rebounds. And I'm like, what? He's not a Big Ten player, right? I mean, that's it, right? He's just not a Big Ten player. I mean, he's averaging like 5 boards a game, and they played one of the softest non-conference schedules you'll ever see. So some of those averages are against mediocre competition. I'm sorry. You're just probably not cut out for the Big Ten. And we saw that. Transition defense was woeful against Indiana. He's running down the floor, and they're just lobbing it over the top like their bigs at Indiana are Justin Jefferson catching passes from Sam Darnold. It made no sense. I mean, and then it just kept happening over and over and over again. And that's coaching. That's effort. And then Ben Johnson calls them out after the game. But if you recall, when you go back to when some of these guys committed, it was rather late in the portal process, right? Like these guys were not coming in early in the portal process, indicating that the Gophers had to settle for the scraps. And
yeah, I think
the money, right?
The interesting thing, though, when you mentioned that, like Elijah Hawkins, when they had him come in last offseason, he was from Howard University in the MEAC. Yeah. Like, he was not proven at all, and he was a huge question mark. And I think he exceeded everyone's expectations, and he was a borderline third-team all-conference level point guard. Lakai Patterson was objectively more proven as a college player. He was second team all conference in the American Athletic Conference last year at Charlotte. That's a much better level of basketball than Howard. And I think it's just fair to say he's been a disappointment
Yeah.
production wise. I think the Gophers expected more out of him to play at the level that Elijah Hawkins was at, or even Talon Cooper the year before, and he just has not been at that level at all. And it just significantly hurt the team. And Femi Odekale, he played at Seton Hall, at Pitt, New Mexico State last year. That's a really good mid-major program, and those are two power conference programs. So he played at a high level of college basketball, and he just has not been able to transition at all this year in the Big Ten in only two conference games. And then Frank Mitchell, like you said, he was one of the best rebounders in the country, and he just isn't really able to find a spot in this rotation at all. And it really just comes back to a roster thing, in my opinion. They just don't have the guys this year, and I think we've seen that in every competent team that they play.
Is that down to Ben Johnson's recruiting, or is that down to not having the NIL funds? What's the reason behind it? Because as you guys pointed out, they did well last year. It seems like getting some of these guys in, but this year it's just been the bottom's fallen out this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just proven that it's not like a sustainable thing every year to go to the transfer portal. Across the country, even at like bigger programs like Arkansas, Eric Musselman's tried to do it every single year, and we saw it didn't work last year. He went to USC this year, tried to do it all again. His whole team's transfers, and they're arguably just as bad as the Gophers, which is saying something. But I just don't think it's a sustainable thing to replace that many transfers every single year. And when we see more consistent programs like in the Big Ten, like a Michigan State, like a Purdue, it's the 3 or 4 transfers, that 2 to 4 range every year. That's like a sustainable thing, and that's college sports now. The 6 or 7 is just too much. I think it takes too long. There's too many moving parts for a team to gel. And when you get these early Big Ten games, I mean, we saw apparently Ben Johnson chewed his team out after the Indiana loss, but it's I don't think it's insane to say that their season's on life support in December, and there's not really much they can do to turn it around, I think.
I wonder if Ben Johnson's seat is hot, or if the state of the NIL and the wait for the revenue sharing for the conferences coming next year is like a safety net. I don't know. I've got no insight into that, but I mean, they don't look like a program that's on the rise, and I think you're right. It's all roster turnover and having to hit the restart button every single year. But why is that? Why is that? Why aren't guys sticking around? Is it all about money? Is it all about fit? I mean, Ben Johnson seems like a really likable coach. The players seem to like him. I mean, I just don't get it. But I would imagine that seat's got to be pretty warm right now.
When you're in year 4 and you're gonna lose 16 plus Big Ten games for the third time, I would imagine it has to get hot. Like even if you're hamstrung by lack of funds, or even if players who you thought were going to be good just aren't working out, like that's, I don't know. You would think that the Gopher basketball program thinks of itself highly enough to where you can't go 4-16 or worse, and that feels like their ceiling this year in the Big Ten in 3 out of 4 years and keep your job. But I am no expert, so we'll see.
Well, Tony, what's the state of your comments on X? Because you have a very strong Gopher following, and when I look at the comments on your posts, it's not very supportive for old Coach Ben Johnson.
No, a lot of people. I'm surprised. A lot of people think I'm way too positive about the basketball team. And
I do agree with them. Yes.
But I mean, I think you do. In the grand scheme of things, you do have to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Mike Mitchell's hurt. I think at this point they'd have 2, maybe 3 losses instead of 5. And Tyler Cochran, the transfer from Toledo, he was the All-MAC Defensive Player of the Year last year. I think he would have overtaken Lakai Patterson at this point for that starting point guard role if he wasn't hurt. So I think that hurts their outlook a little bit. But
Is he coming back soon?
No, I don't think so.
I've never heard that name in my life.
He's been out all year. He broke his foot in the preseason.
Okay, that
I thought I
explain.
heard sometime in December might be coming back, but
That's what it was originally. But I would guess more like mid to late January. And at that point, I don't really even know why he would come back because their record's going to be in the dumps by most likely. But yeah, I don't know. At year 4, I'm kind of at the point that it's a little too much to be making excuses. And I think Ben Johnson just has gotten just terrible luck. And sometimes I think it just happens that way. And I think if you replay the Ben Johnson era with the Gophers, if Parker Fox doesn't tear his ACL twice, I think he has a much different career. If Isaiah Enon doesn't tear his ACL twice, I think he has a much different career. And I think one of those years they might have been able to sneak into the tournament, but those were 2 potential starters 2 years in a row that went down. And now you had 1 potential starter this year that went down, might end up being out for most of the year. Mike Mitchell Jr. was hurt at the start of the year. And it just, I'm making excuses for him, but at year 4, I just don't think you really can. And I think it just comes down to a coaching thing. And it's just, what are your expectations as a program? Are you okay being a bottom 3 to 4 Big Ten team every single year? Or do you have hopes of having a big year every once in a while? Because right now it just seems like they have zero ambition to get to that level with Ben Johnson.
I wonder if the problem is like a sponsorship deal with like Big Baller Brand. Do they have Big Baller Brand shoes? And is that causing lots of injuries like it ruined Lonzo Ball's life?
I never know what this man is going to say.
Nope, me neither. There's no real easy way to transition out of that, so we'll just go to Gophers football, where there's quite a bit going on in the transfer portal space. Tony, we got a little bit of time left here. What's the buzz around the quarterback position? We heard PJ Fleck say this on early National Signing Day, that he's happy with the quarterback room, but they still look to add to it in the transfer portal. What's the latest buzz on a potential new quarterback for the Gophers coming in?
Yeah, I guess my quick overall thoughts on their strategy is last offseason they acted really quick with Brosmer and brought him in right away. And the fact that they haven't done that and haven't been connected to anyone publicly yet makes me think that they're going to kind of bring in more of a number 2 option, a guy that's not a surefire starter. I think their overall preferred plan is for Drake Lindsey to start week 1, but they kind of want him to earn that. And I think they're going to bring in a level of a player with a couple starts, maybe. Not a guy that you're like, okay, like, not a guy that you have to invest a lot of resources in, because that's college sports right now. Brosmer, I'm assuming they invested a lot of resources in his recruitment, in his NIL package. And I bet they promised him that he was going to start. I don't think they're going to do that this time around. There is one name that I keep hearing is Zach Pyron, a guy from Georgia Tech. I think there's some interest there on both ends. He made a couple starts as a true freshman, 1 start this year, kind of got lost in the depth chart there. I think they could get a guy like that, but they got plenty of big visits with a lot of talent. I think they realize they have a lot of holes on their roster overall in the quarterback position. If they invest a lot into that, there might be other positions lacking. So I think they're going to kind of try to build around Lindsey a little bit more and just add an extra arm in that quarterback.
Seems like Minnesota football has dealt with that particular situation before, resting too much on the quarterback and not being able to invest elsewhere. Quickly, around the horn, does PJ Fleck get covered in Duke's mayo at the end of the January 3rd game? Tony, you first, then Joe, then Will.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he obviously loves stuff like that. I don't think there's anything PJ Fleck likes more than PJ Fleck,
Mayo.
to be honest. But Virginia Tech has a lot of transfers going out, so I like the Gophers' chances in this game. Fleck always comes well for the bowl games. I think they win, and he gets the mayo bath.
My prediction is he gets slathered in mayo, and then when he runs into the locker room to dive and do the crowd surfing, he slips out of the player's grasps, and he falls to the ground and breaks a bone. That's what I think will happen.
If you put a gun to my head and asked me to name a Virginia Tech football player this year, I think the most recent one I could give you is Christian Darrisaw. I'm dying in that situation.
I was going to say Mike Vick.
Yeah. I'm dying in that situation, which tells you how much I know about this bowl game. But yeah, I'll say they win because it would just be perfectly PJ Fleck to end up getting doused in mayo and having be one of the accomplishments of his tenure.
Are you a Miracle Whip guy or a mayo guy?
Definitely
I'm anti-mayo.
Oh, you're Miracle Whip then, eh?
Are you anti both?
Yeah, I'm anti-both.
Mustard?
Now we know why he doesn't like Will Levis.
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite sauce, Tony?
I don't know.
We gotta wrap this video up.
I want to hear this.
I was obsessed with ketchup. Like, I would put it on everything. I no longer do that. I'm not a weirdo. I don't like put ketchup on my steak or anything. But
There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty basic. Probably like ketchup, barbecue sauce.
Let people eat how they want to eat. So that's my stance.
I like ranch.
Yeah, my
and like a chipotle aioli. That's some.
Do you dip your pizza in ranch?
Sometimes.
You're a sick son of a.
I agree, Joe. I agree.
Ketchup on steak is okay by Joe, but you dip pizza and ranch, then you're sick, and it's time to go. So I think that's where we'll end it, because that's a good ending spot here for today. Appreciate everybody listening and watching. Do hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video. We'll come back tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports. Talk to you then.